With a new form of government taking shape at City Hall and every seat up for grabs, Austin voters elected 2 new city council members on November 4th and sent 16 council candidates, plus 2 vying for Austin mayor, to runoff elections. Tonight, Beyond the Rhetoric, we ask the remaining candidates what makes them the right person to lead their district and our city.
Support for Civic Summit comes from Google, a global technology leader focused on improving the ways people connect with information. And also by Texas Mutual Insurance, providing workers' compensation for Texas employers.
Hello, and thanks for joining us for Civic Summit, City Council Runoff Conversation, District 3, a joint production of KLRU, Leadership Austin, KUT, and the Annette Strauss Institute for Civic Life. I'm Jennifer Staten with KUT 90.5, Austin's NPR station. For the next half hour, we'll be speaking with the candidates running in District 3. And we invite all of you to tweet along with us. Use the hashtag CivicSummitD3. District 3 covers almost all of East Austin below 12th Street, extending all the way to Ben White Boulevard. It crosses I-35 at Old Torf and incorporates part of South Central Austin. The demographics are primarily Latino, with more than 60% of residents renting rather than owning their homes. Joining us tonight are 2 siblings running against each other to represent District 3. Susana Almanza calls herself a longtime community organizer. She's also an educator, mother, and grandmother. She served on a number of Austin boards and commissions, including Planning, Parks and Rec, and the Environmental Board. She's running against her brother, Sabino Pio Renteria. Pio also has a long history of community work in East Austin. For the last 30 years, he served on city boards and commissions. He currently serves on the East Austin Neighborhood Center Advisory Board. Thanks to both of you for being here. Now, our discussion tonight is going to focus on leadership. So sort of consider this kind of like a job interview. We want to know what skills and qualities you would bring to Austin City Hall. Now, this discussion is not being conducted in an official debate manner, but we are asking candidates to be respectful of each other's time and to limit their answers to about a minute. So the first question of the session, which was shared with both of you before, what have you learned about yourself over the last 4 months of campaigning that will help you govern? And Susana, if you want to take that one first.
Thank you so much for having me here. First, I want to say I'm not running against my brother. My brother's running against me. I announced in January and he announced in May, so I want to make sure that the audience gets that correct. I've learned many things. My leadership skills have been one. I actually went through Leadership Austin class, but I've also am the director of Environmental Justice Organization for that for over 23 years. So that is a leadership in itself, to be able to administer a program, work with community members, work on policies, be involved at the city level, the state level, and the national level. That takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of research. It takes a lot of passion, compassion. It takes a lot of love of community. And I think that that is one of my most outstanding assets, is that I have a deep love of community. I have a deep love of justice and freedom and human rights. And I want to make sure that we all live in a fair and balanced society. And so I bring those skills to the forefront. Like I said, the knowledge, the experience, being a mother, a grandmother, an aunt, a sister, being a friend. And so those, I think, are leadership skills that I and many women and many people in today offer.
Pio.
Well, what I've learned in this campaign is that it is a lot of work. And I mean, I have all the respect for people that run for candidacy now, because it's a 12 to 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. But I love those I've done that all my life since I first worked for John Trevino, Gonzalo Barrientos when he ran for state rep the first time, and the second time, because he lost the first time, with Richard Moya, our first county commissioner. So I've been with I've worked for the leaders that have lived here in Austin. You know, I helped Eddie Rodriguez to get elected to state rep, Father J.B. McDeas for school board, Raul Alvarez for city council, and then Mike Martinez. But the thing is that I've learned to work with our elected officials and at the same time have listened to my community. You know, when I served on the Community Development Commission, we learned that gentrification was coming into our town. And I didn't sit there. I went and asked Eddie to help us on this issue. And he passed the Homestead Preservation Act, which our governor, Governor Perry actually signed it. You know, it's just amazing that he was able to do that for us. And that's one of the main things that I have always worked for our community, is for helping the people that are in most need. You know, and that's why I've served on all kinds of city commission boards, and that's my passion is. You know, I worked 34 years with IBM and retired. I had a career. I have 3 beautiful children, 2 sons and a daughter, and 3 grandchildren. And my passion for the city has been so great. You know, I not only worked, you know, for a corporation like IBM, but also served, you know, in halfway boards. And I have always tried to go out there and listen to the people and then go out there and see and try to find a solution to the problem.
All right, so let's dig into those leadership skills then a little more. Now, Pio, you said campaigning is a lot of work.
Yes.
So I'm curious to hear from each of you, when faced with a lot of work, campaigning is a lot of work, governing is a lot of work. As a leader, how do you prioritize? How do you decide what gets done first, what gets done second, who gets listened to first, who gets listened to second? Talk about how you, as a leader, would prioritize the big plate of work that would be in front of you. Pio, if you want to take that one first.
I was a past chair, and I'm vice chair of the neighborhood planning team, the Cesar Chavez neighborhood planning team. And, you know, we set up a system where we had nonprofits, we had business people, we had people of faith, we had community people, and we worked these people and welcomed them and made them feel like they had an input in our community. And we meet once a month. This has been a very successful program. The neighborhood planning teams has been a great program for our community there in Cesar Chavez, because we sit down there and we look at the problems and then have a solution, and we welcome all input. We don't decide that this is what we don't want. We sit down there and then we invite the community to come over and listen to what we're doing, whether it's a variance or whether it's a hotel that wants to be built there, or, you know, we have designated our entertainment district where they're on 6th and 5th Street. So those are the kind of things that, you know, we do, and I want to, you know, really work on that and expand it to the other areas, because I know we have it next to us, the Holly neighborhood. It has been trying for years to develop a neighborhood planning team, and it hasn't happened because there's a few people there that are constantly fighting, and unless we are able to sit down and find a solution, then we're never going to solve the problems that we're facing there in East Austin.
So, Susana, same question to you about prioritizing when you have a lot of work on your plate.
Well, work is something I've grown up with, and I'm accustomed to working. I come from a family where my father worked from the moment the sun came up to the moment the sun went down, and grew up with 10 siblings, so work is not anything that I'm afraid of. But I've been involved in 3 of the neighborhood contact teams: the Cesar Chavez Neighborhood Contact Team, the Go Valley Johnson Neighborhood Contact Team, and the Metropolis Neighborhood Contact Team. And I'm also part of the Raza Roundtable, part of ABLA, which is the business groups. And so I get to look and hear a variety of issues, where there's community issues, small business issues, citywide issues. I'm also part of the Austin Neighborhood Council. And so I look at a variety of issues citywide. And so looking at priorities, of course, I'm going to look at the priorities of District 3 first. And so looking at the priority of District 3, I've had focus groups, I've talked with community members, and so I know that the priority issues, one is affordability. That is a very big issue for the community. The next issue is job creation, a living wage of $15 an hour. Looking at health care and the accessibility of health care. Looking at transportation, that is a local issue, a District 3 issue, but it's also a citywide issue. So looking at alternative to transportation issues, and then education. Looking at the need, especially in District 3, since we've had so many low-performing schools, and we've had a population of adults who have limited education. So education is a big issue that we need to look at and address. Looking at the priorities of District 3, but also looking at the common issues, because some of those overlap citywide, you know, transportation, affordability, job creation, a lot of those are citywide issues. So making that, finding common ground citywide, but also addressing the issues at the District 3 level.
Right, so I want to give you a hypothetical scenario where we're going to talk about sort of conflict and resolving conflict. So I'm going to give you a hypothetical first of all. So a developer is in conflict over a project with a local neighborhood group. The city staff prefers one solution, the neighborhood group prefers another. So I want to hear what skills of yours you would use to resolve, you know, this scenario, but also really any other conflicts that are no doubt going to arise between competing interests. So Susana, if you want to take that one first.
Absolutely. You know, serving on the Planning Commission myself, I've had the experience of having developers come up with an issue, having neighborhoods come up with the issue, and being the president of a contact team and sitting on several contact teams, I also understand the perspective that's coming from a community issue. And so I look at, one thing is that you need to make sure that the developers have had those sit-down talks with the community. That's very important. We actually passed the East Austin Overlay Ordinance in 1993 to assure that people in East Austin had the same rights that people in West Austin, to sit down with the developers first, to discuss about what project was coming in, how would it benefit the community, was it something that the community want, was it something that the community would like to compromise on, so that it becomes a give and take issues. And so then at the city level, being able to look at those issues, did the developer have the conversations with the neighborhood, did the neighborhood agree that this is something they could live with, or something they could live in with maybe conditions, or it could be the neighborhood says, no, thank you, we don't want this. So I think having those skills and already being there on both sides of the table in the city government and on the neighborhood issue gives me that ability to know that you really have to research those issues and you really need to look at the neighborhood issues. But more important is that you have to look at the neighborhood plans. What does the neighborhood plan say? Because people have dedicated years of their lives to making those neighborhood plans. And a lot of times city staff will come and trump, or city itself will trump the neighborhood plans, which I'm not very happy about when people dedicate so much of their time and energy, are not paid or anything, but because they care about the neighborhood, and then all of a sudden to have their neighborhood plans disrespected or overlooked or trumped.
Pio, same question for you about resolving conflicts between competing groups.
Yes, you know, we go through this, you know, yearly, and for the last 14 years through our neighborhood contact team. As you might know, the Cesar Chavez Neighborhood Planning Team is right there next to downtown Austin. So we're we have more pressure on us of being developed than any other place there is. But you know, we really need to just be really reasonable and compassionate about when the developers in the neighborhood, and just really say we're going to have a really serious sit down, and then look at the codes that really, you know, there's codes out there that tells you and let you know that this is what you can do, and it's very hard to stop those kind of developers that when they come in and they meet in all the rules and regulations, you know, and maybe you shouldn't have to go down and try to stop them. We should get something out of it. You know, when someone comes in with a mixed-use building plan, we should say, hey, listen, you know, the city says that you have to give us 10% affordability. Now, what else can you give to us, you know? So can we work with you to maybe instead of that 10%, we can say, why don't you provide 2 bedrooms instead of 1 bedroom so that families can live affordable, families can become affordable housing so that families can live in that. So there's a lot of leeway that we can work with developers. But you know, it really comes down to is if the community really wants that. You know, our planning team, you know, we've been at it at 14 years now in our area. And we need to respect you know, the planning team. The contact team that we have are very professionals. They include developers, they include business people, they include community people, and we want to be a big family. So if they want to be part of our family, they're in our community, then we can work and sit down with them. And that's what we do in Cesar Chavez contact team.
So your constituents will no doubt let you know when they think maybe you've done something that they don't like, when maybe in their eyes rather, you have not done a good job. So that'll probably be clear when that happens. But I'm curious to hear from each of you all sort of what your personal benchmarks are for whether you're doing a good job serving your constituents and leading your district. How do you sort of measure yourself in that regard? And Pio, if you want to take that one first.
Well, I measured it as, you know, when we leave the meeting, or, you know, people are not upset and angry and mad. You know, we need to sit down there and we do those kind of things. You know, I have to admit that, you know, sometimes I get things passed and, you know, later on I find out that something went wrong. You know, maybe I made a mistake. You know, I'm willing to admit that. You know, and there's sometimes when the other members say, hey, this is what we want, and we're going to, and it turned out that, yeah, that's what happened, and it worked, you know. And I'm the first one to admit that, hey, I was wrong. And let's keep on working together, you know. There's sometimes that I make mistakes, they make mistakes, developer make mistakes. We can't just be fighting it and just be headbutting and say, no, my way or the highway, you know. It's been going on too long, and not only here in Austin, but in our nation. And we need to really just sit down and start working together. And that's the only way that we're going to be able to keep East Austin affordable, and working with these developers to build us the affordability that we need.
Susana.
Well, I think it's real important. Was I looking at community interest, or was it special interest? I think that's the #1 benchmark. Was I looking at community interest or special interest? In other words, did I make my decision or my judgment, you know, on the research, on what neighborhoods said were impacting them, looking at the neighborhood plan, what is in the neighborhood, you know, plan, what was their goals, their strategies for their neighborhood, and making sure that there was, again, that discussion. So one is to make sure that I personally visit that particular issue, that I sit down and talk with community, and that I sit down and talk with the developers, because a lot of times you have to have smaller committees to have those discussions and then be able to take them back to the larger group to talk to them. So I look at playing a more active role, because I'm used to playing that role. I'm used to sitting down and talking with developers, going to our city council representatives, taking neighborhood members with me, because one of the important things is, do I really integrate the community in the issues? To me, that's #1. Was the community integrated into the issues? Did they have a say at the table? Did they have a discussion with the developers? To me, that's very important. If that discussion has not happened, that particular case is going back, because there is a process that the city has said that they must first meet with the most impacted, or the contact team, or the neighborhood association, and work that out before it goes to the next stage. And then it alleviates a lot of things. So I'm looking at those benchmarks as, you know, being involved in the process. Was the community active? Did they have a say? Were all the parties involved? And if they are, then I'm going to feel that I did my job, you know, as the representative for District 3, because that's the most important. Did I do my job to represent the interests of the community versus the special interests?
So the city is pivoting to a new form of government, the 10-1 form of government, with 10 geographically drawn districts for the city council. I'm curious to hear from each of you. What do you think is the biggest challenge that the city is going to face as we transition to that form of government, and how would you overcome that challenge? Susana first.
Well, I think that's going to be the biggest challenge is working with staff. Because staff has been used to having the at-large system at such a long time, and only specific people deciding the decisions or leading staff in a certain way. You're now going to have representatives from out Austin having that communication with the staff. So that's going to be very important. So the challenge is to make and help staff recognize that we're no longer at an at-large system, that we are now in a single-member district, and that we have to look at cases at the district level, and then, of course, look at cases that are city-wide. And so looking at staff, looking at the department heads, that's going to be another thing, is forming those relationships. I'm very fortunate because I've sat on so many boards and commissions and initiatives that I've had the opportunities to meet with all the top staff of all the different departments. And so those things are very important, because it is the department heads that then advise their staffers of how things are supposed to run. So I think it won't be as much as a challenge, because I've had that experience. I've worked within city government, and I've been able to work on a lot of different issues because I've been on a lot of boards and commissions. So I look at more as relationship building. That is going to be the thing. Can we build those relationships, and how fast should we build those relationships is very important.
Thank you. And Pio, the same question to you.
Well, I think one of few of the priorities that I'm going to take is, you know, really look at the boards and commissions that we're going to have and form. There's 10 new members with and one mayor, so that's 11 people that we're going to be filling out the commissions, the boards and commissions. And one of the things that really just gets to me about what's going on is that, you know, we have these departments that are not talking to each other. And that's going to be one of my priorities, is that, you know, we go and look for a permit, or we have to, you know, put in some development plans. You know, they're saying, oh no, you got to go here, and then they say you got to go there. And you know, it's just so frustrating for people that want to develop and get things done in Austin, and to go through the permitting process. It's just, I mean, it's horrible. You know, we need to just, there's parks. You know, we got cultural center, park center, and they're all supposed to be doing the same things, but you know, you got so much conflicts going on. Everybody thinks that they're the ownership of this little program or department, and they don't want to communicate with the rest of the people, rest of the workers, city workers there. And one of my plans is to be just like the Hispanic Initiative, where you're getting all the departments to talk about this. They're all in the same, you know, doing the same kind of work, but they just do not communicate with each other. So I think that's one of the, you know, toughest priorities that we're going to be facing, because we really need to do those kind of things. We need to tell these permitting departments that, hey, you know, y'all need to talk to each other. You know, you don't be saying that, well, that's not our department. You got to go over here. And then the other one, we need to automate. You know, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to go online and filling out and get a permit. I mean, you're wasting all your time there at City Hall, I mean at the department there, the permit department. And it's like, I have an example of what I did. You know, I went to short-term rental.
So we're actually getting close to the end of our time, okay. So I'm going to have to hop to our last question. If I could just get a sentence from each of you on this one. At the end of your term, how will your constituents describe your leadership skills and qualities? A sentence from each of you. P.O., you first.
I think they're going to say that this is one person that, you know, I was able to go to his office, talk to him, and feel like, you know, he really felt like, you know, I was really concerned about his problem. And that he said, I really feel like, you know, he is really going to work on this solution.
All right, that's your sentence. Thank you, Susana.
Well, I think that they're going to be very proud that they continue to support justice, freedom, and human rights. Is something that we've been working on for a long time. And they're going to make sure and be involved, continue to be involved. And so they're going to be happy that I integrated them into city government and that they had a seat at the table and that they had a voice at the table.
And that is all the time we have for tonight. Thanks to both of you, Susana Almanza and Sabino P.O. Renteria. All of the runoff conversations and our conversations with the newly elected candidates for Districts 2, 5, and 9 will be available on YouTube. Early voting in the runoff election starts December 1st. Election Day is December 16th. For KLRU, Leadership Austin, the Annette Strauss Institute for Civic Life, and KUT, I'm Jennifer Staten. Thanks so much for watching.
Support for Civic Summit comes from Google, a global technology leader focused on improving the ways people connect with information. And also by Texas Mutual Insurance, providing workers' compensation for Texas employers.